Okay, everyone. So we have the full spoilers for Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Chapter 23, and I am going to be talking about some of them here in this video. Now, as I do with these full spoiler videos, I'm not going to go over every single thing that we have because I usually save that for my official chapter review when the chapter is officially released, which in this case is going to be on the 19th. So keep your eye out for the chapter review when that officially gets released on this channel. So right now, we are going to go over some of the things that do stand out to us, and there is definitely a lot for us to talk about. So we are going to be going over what we have here in terms of the fight between Boruto and Jura. There's of course what happens towards the end, which we will get to, although if you see the thumbnail and the title of the video, you probably already know what it is that's going to happen later on in this chapter. And of course, there is another thing that does happen that we do need to talk about, but as I said, I am going to save most of my thoughts or all of my thoughts for the official chapter review. I'll talk about it a little bit, but if you want my full thoughts on it, then that's going to be in the official Boruto chapter review, again, when the chapter is officially released. So for now, let's go over what we have right here. Again, this is the continuation of the fight between Boruto and Jura, and just like I'm sure a lot of us predicted, the fight, even though Boruto is putting up a good fight against Jura, ultimately it is completely useless because Jura is just way too strong. There is basically nothing Boruto can do against Jura that is effectively going to actually defeat him. And we actually do learn some interesting things about Jura, so we know more about his technique that we've been seeing him use up until this point, the mini Bijudamas that we've been seeing him fire off in the story ever since he's been introduced, or ever since he introduced that he has this ability. We actually know more about them. So we know that he now has two types of Bijudama that he uses. There's the long range version, and he has a close range version, which is actually more of a, as he calls it, a scatter type, which according to him could be more effective for fighting against an opponent like Boruto, who has an ability like the Flying Raijin, who has the ability to fly and can move about the battlefield. And he even tries using that here in this fight. Now, Boruto, of course, using Flying Raijin to escape every one of every one of Jura's attacks. And again, despite doing that, he is still ultimately no match for Jura. And despite actually getting a clean hit on Jura, where he uses Flying Raijin in a pretty intelligent way. So there is this exchange between them in the air where Jura manages to knock Boruto's sword out of his hand, and Boruto uses Flying Raijin to teleport himself to the sword and then uses it to cut Jura's foot off. So yeah, Jura loses a foot in this fight. And there is this interesting moment where there's a panel that focuses specifically on the foot falling down. And I can't help but wonder if this is going to be important later on in the story, because you don't dedicate a panel to that specifically unless it's going to come up later on in the story. So I'm guessing that's going to be important. Not in this chapter, because that doesn't come back in this chapter, but I'm guessing in either the next chapter or maybe the one after that, depending on how long this fight goes on. And just judging on what we have here, I'm guessing the fight is most likely going to conclude in the next chapter, or at least early in the chapter after that. So maybe early in chapter 25 or in chapter 24. That's what I'm guessing is going to be the end of this fight. Again, just based off what we have here in chapter 23. So yeah, Jura loses a foot and then has this exchange between him and Boruto, where Boruto just gets overpowered, and we see what we got in the sneak peek where Jura grabs Boruto's hand and Boruto uses purple lightning to get Jura to let go. And just like what I predicted in my video that I made where I covered the sneak peek that got released on the official Naruto website, the reason why Boruto did that is to get some distance between himself and Jura, and that's exactly what does end up happening here. But we also see the side effects of the fight where Boruto is clearly exhausted. He has used up a lot of his chakra. He is barely holding on. And not to mention Jura's attack where he trapped him with the trees, that actually did affect Boruto more than just trapping him. He actually got stabbed by one of the tree branches, and it actually left a pretty deep wound. And Boruto is basically bleeding out at this moment, in addition to him basically being exhausted due to all the chakra usage that he's done throughout this entire fight, using abilities like the Rasengan, like Flying Raijin, like Purple Lightning. Remember, all of these abilities use up a lot of chakra. And that's why even if you're someone who does have a higher chakra pool, you still have to be very careful, because there are abilities that use up so much chakra that you can't just spam them. If you want an example, go back to the Kaguya fight at the end of the Naruto manga, where Kaguya, despite Sasuke basically saying that she has so much chakra, he can't believe that someone like this actually existed, she still was using abilities that use up a ton of chakra, like the ability where she teleports people to other dimensions, or her other dimensions. That uses up a lot of chakra. Black Zetsu did make a comment that that's not an ability she can just spam, because even for someone like her, it's going to use up a lot of her own chakra, so she has to be careful whenever she uses it. And we're seeing that here in this fight between Boruto and Jura, where Boruto, again, despite being really strong, despite having a lot of chakra, because he's spamming these abilities that use up a ton of chakra, now he's basically exhausted and he's feeling the effects of it. Whereas Jura is showing basically no signs of exhaustion. Despite just losing a foot, Jura is not bothered by what happened at all. And that's going to be a recurring theme, and it's going to be important later on for what happens in the chapter. We'll get to that, don't worry. And pretty much what I think a lot of us, again, knew was going to happen, Jura just completely destroys Boruto. Like, Boruto stands absolutely no chance against him. And at one point, Boruto tries to attack him, but Jura blocks Boruto's sword and even leaves a chip on Boruto's sword, or excuse me, Sasuke's sword. And of course, Boruto is upset by this, because the sword is obviously very important to him. It belonged to Sasuke, his master, and obviously he doesn't want anything to happen to it. Now, the thing is, I still don't think, or no, we know nothing's going to happen to the sword, because we still see it in the flash forward. So it definitely is not going to get broken. At least I don't think. I could be wrong. Unless maybe the theory that what we saw at the beginning is just one of Kashin Koji's futures that he saw with 10 Directions. Unless that turns out to be the case, maybe that might get proven here with this fight against Jura. If the sword does break, then it might prove that theory to be true. But if it doesn't, then it means that that is actually what ends up happening. So obviously we'll have to wait and see for what ends up happening. But yeah, Boruto, after being shocked by what Jura did, blocking his sword and nearly breaking it, Jura takes the opportunity to kick Boruto away, basically the same as when he kicked away Kawaki. And Boruto is just, he's out. And he's completely knocked out. And we cut to Ada, and this is where we get the other interesting thing in the chapter, where we see Kashin Koji back in the lair, and we actually see the activation of 10 Directions. So the way Kashin Koji describes it is he's getting an update to the futures that he saw. Now remember, what Kashin Koji said is that the way 10 Directions work is he basically uses it to see the future, and all of it depends on everything what happened at the moment. And that's why he specifically told Boruto that we can't tell people about this ability that he has about the future, because the more people know about the future, the higher the chance for it to be completely changed. And he even said that we have to stop that from happening, because if it does happen, then it makes everything that they learned, everything that they planned for, completely useless, because all of that goes away. And now you have to plan for this completely new future that you were shown with 10 Directions. And that is exactly what's happening here. Remember, Kashin Koji kept warning Boruto that we can't move away from what we planned, because something like this could end up happening, and it's even happening right here in front of us. So we see Kashin Koji looking at the future. We actually see the ability working in real time, whereas before we didn't get to see that because we saw it briefly in a flashback. And we see these new futures that Kashin Koji is seeing. Now, one of them is very interesting. It predicts basically what's going to happen later on in this chapter, where we see an image of Jura covering his right eye. And again, that's obviously coming into play later on in the story. And we immediately cut back to Boruto, and Jura is just about to kill Boruto. Remember, Boruto's out cold. He is completely defenseless here. Jura is just about to kill Boruto. And then we get to the moment that is going to make a lot of Kawaki fans happy. As I said, if you see the thumbnail for this video, you already know what is going to happen in this chapter. But yeah, Kawaki catches Jura off guard, where he stabs him through the back of his head and through his right eye. And Kawaki makes a comment that Jura must really be a monster, because if something like this isn't killing him, then what is it going to take? I mean, that would normally kill literally anyone else. But Jura, keep in mind, again, you know what? I'll save it for a little bit later, because this is something that we do need to talk about a little bit more. Again, I'll give my full thoughts on this in the full chapter review, but it is something I definitely do want to talk about in this video. So yeah, Kawaki is here. So all the people who predicted that Kawaki was going to show up in this video, or excuse me, in this chapter, you are absolutely correct. You managed to predict it. But something else that, again, I'll discuss this more in the official chapter review, but we see another panel of Kashin Koji looking at the future. And in the multiple futures that we see, one of them shows Jura back in the Shinju dimension. So Jura is definitely not being defeated in this fight. I think most of us pretty much predicted that was going to be the case. I don't think any of us really expected Jura to die right here. I think that there's obviously still a lot more to the story. So obviously Jura wasn't going to die here, but we do see him back in the Shinju dimension. But what's interesting is we also see two panels of Hidari and Sarada. Sarada seemingly with her Sharingan activated. But what's even more interesting is Hidari looks like he is basically doing the same move that Itachi did to Sasuke all throughout the Naruto manga that we saw, especially during their childhood and obviously right at the very end when he died, not including later on when he was revived as Zenitsu Tensei. But that's just what it looks like. And I am wondering if this is hinting towards Hidari being essentially more and more connected to Sasuke, since that is who he was made from. And we do know that the Shinju retain aspects of the people that they were made from. And also Kashin Koji, as he's looking into the future, he sees Kawaki and he is surprised because he basically realized that, okay, Boruto must have said something to Kawaki, because Kawaki was never a part of the future that he saw. So that's interesting. So Koji didn't tell Boruto to tell Kawaki to go to Amado to get his limiters removed. That was something Boruto decided, and apparently without telling Kashin Koji, because Kashin Koji is surprised by this information. So again, I am wondering what's going to go, what's going on there. And anyway, we cut back to the fight and we see Jura basically try to grab Kawaki. Kawaki manages to escape in time, and then he reappears in front of Jura, hits him with a bunch of chakra rods, and immediately goes back to where Boruto actually is, because Jura, of course, just brushes it off like nothing even happened, and then tries to hit Kawaki with a Bijudama. Kawaki, of course, manages to avoid it, and then Jura is just removing the chakra rods again like nothing even happened to him. And what's really interesting, again, we do need to talk about this, is that despite what Kawaki just did to him, despite him basically getting rid of one of his eyes, Jura still looks completely unfazed by what's happening right here. Again, completely unfazed by being hit by Kawaki's chakra rods, completely unfazed by the fact that he just lost an eye. He is unfazed by all of this. Now, obviously, just like with the other Awakened Shinju, he could just go back to the Shinju dimension and the tree will just heal him and everything will be fine. So I think because he knows that, he's not really worried that, oh, I could just, go back and I could just get healed. And I am wondering if that's what the foot that he lost is going to play a part in, because his foot also contains a part of the claw mark. And I am wondering if Jura is going to use that to escape into the Shinju dimension, get healed, come back, and then he's going to resume the fight against against Boruto and the others. I'm wondering, obviously I'm just theorizing. And what happens immediately after that is Kawaki activates his karma mark. So Kawaki realizes that even after getting his limiters removed, even after getting Ishiki's full attack power, he still feels like he needs to activate the karma mark, get the boost from the karma mark in order to fight against Jura. So for all of the power scalers that are out there, you can definitely use this as an argument that Jura scales above Ishiki, because if Kawaki has access to all of Ishiki's attack power, not being limited by Amado, and he still feels like he needs to stack karma on top of it, then I think that basically, again, does make an argument for Jura being above Ishiki, which would make him above Baryon Mode Naruto, which would put Kawaki and Boruto in that level of power. So again, I know there might be a lot of people out there who are not going to be happy about that, but that is essentially what we have here in this chapter. Anyway, guys, I'm going to end this video right here. Like I said, I'm going to save my full thoughts for everything that's going on here. There's definitely more I want to discuss with this chapter. We do have more, but like I said, I just want to focus on some of the stuff that stood out to me. And again, my full thoughts on the entire chapter will be in the official chapter review when the official chapter officially gets released. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And if you enjoyed this video, guys, please hit the like button, share the video out there. Please, guys, subscribe if you're new. It really does help support the channel. And I hope I'll see you guys for my official chapter review, like I said, which again should be out on the day that the chapter gets released. Bye for now.